How is that? No, that's good. We're having a little bit of an echo problem. Okay, let me just do it with a. Okay, good evening. We apologize. We're this is the first during these meetings, and we're having a little bit of technical challenges. So I apologize for that. First up on our agenda, we have Joyce Hochul, our reporting on class. No, they still can't. I am unmuted. No. No. Muted. Does that one need to be? So that. Okay, so no one can hear us. No, not always.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear an echo with me?
No.
I don't hear an echo with you right now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're good. So first on our agenda, we have our village historian, Joyce Hochul. Joyce is here tonight to report on a street naming request for a street to be named after Dr. George Hill. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our village historian, Joyce Hochul.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joyce.
Okay, great. So tonight I will be discussing my report and my findings for a street naming request submitted by Althema Goodson of the Dr. George W. Hill Legacy Center. Full disclosure, I am co-founder of that center with Althema Goodson. And it came about because of his incredible legacy that in my research as village historian that I just wanted to continue his legacy in this community. But I will do my report now. So my research into the the contributions of Dr. Hill to this village were conducted by consulting with quite a few sources. It was almost not a moment I couldn't find someone that had been impacted by him. But I talked to his daughter, Deborah Hill, his daughter, and Dr. Mary Lane Cobb, who went, and she's quite the impressive doctor herself. When she was doing her residency, she shadowed Dr. Hill. Donna Chambers, former patient and employee, and I'll get into that later. Diane Chirac, who is my mother. Tanya Holt, who is my aunt. They were all delivered by Dr. Hill. Shondi and Shay Speller, former patients. Denise McIver, and the list goes on and on forever of the people I talked to, as well as Facebook posts, newspaper articles, and a large research I'd been doing prior to this on his life. So Dr. George W. Hill was born in New York City, and he moved to Mount Vernon when he was 3 with his family. And that is where he graduated from high school, Mount Vernon High School. In researching his life, Dr. Hill got his serving heart from his father. His father was quite involved in the Mount Vernon community. When Dr. Hill was a young child, he was very impressed by his family doctor, and that is who inspired him to go on to become a doctor. He went to Indiana University, went to Cornell, and then he went to Indiana University School of Medicine, where he was the only Black student. It served a lot of challenges for him, but the feisty, intelligent, amazing man that he did very well there. He came home and went to Harlem Hospital, and he looked for a place to become a doctor. And when he was looking for a place to go and settle and start his practice, he said that I love this town was his quote. And someone told him it wouldn't be very welcoming to a Black doctor. And he said, in that case, I will go. So that speaks to who he was as a person. So in 1934, he came to Ossining and started his practice on Croton Street at 10 Croton Street. It was very hard for him to get patients at the time. He did not just want to be a Black doctor. He wanted to service anyone that needed help. But it was hard from him in the beginning. And then he took his practice down to Hunter Street, 13 Hunter Street, where he saw patients out of his apartment. And if you research that area, Hunter Street, Secor Road, and Water Street, that became its own village in a village for the Black community. So his office was there. After he became quite successful in that office, he moved to 30 State Street, who everyone knows now is Dr. Hill's house and his office. In his time here in Ossining, he started the Negro Civic Organization, who is the organization that gave us Doors Circle. As soon as he passed away, he was instrumental in getting to you all, the village board, and getting Doors Circle done. And then he also, the cooperative scholarship that is still given out to Black high school students is still going. That is a Dr. Hill thing. He was a veteran of World War II, a surgeon. He was instrumental in getting the Ossining community knowledge in sickle cell, which affects African Americans. He had a sickle cell clinic in St. Matthew's Church, and over 500 patients were seen. He taught them how to take the blood, what this sickness would do to you. He actually was able to diagnose some people with it and help them with their care. There's so much to say about him. He later, this is very a cute story, his office and his house were in the same place. Dr. Hill left us and moved to Croton because there was no separation between him and his practice and his family. So people would show up at his house and late at night with a sickness. Oh, I feel this, I feel that. So his wife wanted them to have a normal family. So they moved away from the practice so they can have a normal life when he wasn't at work. And that speaks also to the type of man he was, that he never turned this community away. He had a vision before he passed. He wanted to have a center filled with Black physicians, dentists, everything Black. So the Black community and anyone that needed help that could not afford the private doctors, to have someone to go to that cared about their well-being and the whole person. He was very big on caring for the whole person. So he didn't want to just cure your high blood pressure. He wanted to find out why you had high blood pressure. And that was even talking about if your husband or wife was driving you crazy, that he would talk to them about that. Dr. Hill also was quite an activist. There are many people in the community that will tell you, I'm going to skip over that a little bit, that they got their jobs because of him. He cared very deeply about the education, especially of Black students. He would go to them, find out what they wanted to do, call the college, make sure they could get in, and support them in whatever they needed. If they needed tutoring, whatever they needed, he would do it. If they needed a job, he would make sure they got a job. He would find out what their skills were and place them appropriately. This is so much more than a doctor to this community. We have the Ossining Open Door because of Dr. Hill. That was his legacy. That's what he was working towards. And his colleagues at Phelps, Dr. Hill's also the first Black resident physician of any hospital in our county. He was Ossining Hospital, Phelps, and the prison. He is revered for being a gentleman. I also found out that he was a jockey. I'm going to look into that a little further. It makes sense because of his size and stature, but I want to look into it further. He was so much to the community that his presence is still very missed today by many, and so much so that he inspired me in Althema to start a center in his honor to continue his legacy, and especially supporting our youth. So Althema has submitted to have, Academy Place and State Street renamed Dr. George W. Hill Place. And that is where we would love to have that. It's right in front of the house. There's really so much to talk about with him. It goes on and on. He was part of the Negro Elks. He was a member of the Westchester Heart Association, the board of directors of the Westchester Mental Hygiene Association, Westchester War Manpower Board, the medical board of Phelps Memorial Hospital, New York State Fellowship for a Study of Social Diseases. As I said, the Ossining Negro Civic Organization, the Cooperative Scholarship Fund. He was a Greek. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He was a member of the Pride of Ossining Lodge, that is the Negro Elks that was on Secor Road. And by the way, they did try to start a Black community center on Secor Road. He ran for a seat on the Ossining School Board, but the school board at the time was not ready for a Black person to be on the board, even though he was the physician to many of the people. What else spoke to me about him is he didn't care about money. He had an Italian man that had a very large family, and he could not afford to pay for medical care for everyone. Dr. Hill knew he was a great landscaper and exchanged for his properties for him to landscape, and he took care of his family. We know that's not even. It's not even at all. But he cared about the family, and he wanted that man to still keep his pride that his family was being cared for. What else? He was a former member of the county, state, and American Medical Associations of the American Academy of General Practitioners. He is a lifetime member of the NAACP. He was very active in the Ossining branch. He was the man of the town. There's not much that Dr. Hill did not have his hand in. So I think I will end there. He was a loving father, talking to his daughter. Oh, actually, no, I do want to add something else. He went to the library and started a collection of books written by Black people for especially the Black kids to see, Black authors, but for everyone to enjoy. He really cared about the arts. He was very big on culturing yourself. He just was really a man, just a man of the town. He really, really was. And I couldn't see anyone more fitting than Dr. Hill to have a street named after him at minimum. That's really, he really is quite the man with an incredible legacy. So thank you. Karen, can you hear me? Okay, I'm complete. That is it.
We're looking into some sound issues because Trustee Quesada had started, Deputy Mayor Quesada had started talking, so you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's very, very low.
Can you speak?
Joyce, can you hear me?
A lot of feedback, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes. The mic is on. It's coming through here, but it's not, it's still reverberating. Obviously from here, but it's. Try now. No, it's still reverberating.
Everybody?
Joyce, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. All right. Having some, so everybody else can hear me and
I think when
Television part.
when you are talking to, the same thing happened with Karen, when you're talking to the left corner of the screen, for some reason you go off. But when you're
Well,
right there, it sounded.
about now.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right, thank you. Joyce, it was really, really very nice to actually learn Dr. Hill and his legacy. That's the history that you and I talked about a long time ago, you know,
Yeah.
what that means for our end as well. So I do appreciate that. I really just wanted to say thank you. I don't have any additional questions at this time. I'm in favor of moving this going forward for the next steps, but I'm not sure if any other board member may have additional questions or concerns.
Thank you.
They all say yes. So Joyce, thank you so much. And please keep doing the research. I want to see the hockey portion of it. How does that makes it part of this? It's even more interesting now, I guess. So thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate all
welcome.
the hard work you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Next on our agenda, we have Ossining and Green Ossining's own Suzie Ross to talk about the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act. Susie's done a lot of work on this particular initiative, so she'll bring us up to speed on it, why it's important for municipalities to sign on to this. And it is really part of her ongoing work with Green Ossining on environmental issues and environmental justice for the village and beyond. So with that, I'd like to turn it over.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
great. Okay. So thank you so much, Karen, and thank you, board members. And we've done a lot of work together. This particular bond act is something I actually requested that both the village and the town support a resolution because we often are actually acknowledged outside of this community in environmental circles as being very environmentally forward thinking. And we have actually become a little bit of a role model among many other communities that don't necessarily see the kind of support that we often get for issues like this. And that's much more of a testament not to my actions, but to yours. So I'm forever grateful. I actually did the same. I just had, I met with the town board yesterday, and so you are my next stop. And Karen, thank you for asking me to be here. So my request again is to support the Bond Act via a resolution. That resolution would acknowledge the village of Ossining on press releases and whatnot, but most importantly, it speaks to, you know, the variety of other things that you have supported in the environmental space. I wanted to give you a little bit of history about the Bond Act, give you a little bit of information around it, and also provide you with some information with regard to who else is supporting it. So just to step back, this was formerly called the Restore Mother Nature Bond Act, and it was supported by the state legislature in 2019, and it was supposed to be on the ballot in November of the pandemic year. And because of the chaos that ensued, beginning in March of that year, Cuomo decided to not put it on the ballot because he felt that it would not get the attention or recognition and would surely be, you know, voted down by voters at that time. So it was tabled, and it was a $3 billion bond act at that time. The current legislature passed it again this year, but Governor Hochul actually upped the bond to $4.2 billion. And that in part is recognition, I believe, and this is just really my opinion, it was up so much because the original Bond Act did not have the carve outs in terms of climate, in acknowledgement of climate change. And over the last few years, we've seen how quickly climate change has affected communities. Extreme weather events are becoming a norm. And I also believe that it was probably upped because of the fact that the state legislature failed to pass enough environmental legislation that would, you know, keep us safe. So this Bond Act is $4.2 billion. The last time our state had a chance to vote on a bond act was 26 years ago with then Governor Pataki's administration, and it was called the Clean Water, Clean Air Bond Act, and it was almost $1.8 billion. So it's quite a significant change, but again, with climate change, there have been a number of digits added to the Pataki administration's original Bond Act. So the bulk of the legislation and the name of the new Bond Act is called the Clean Water, Clean Air and Green Jobs Bond Act, in part, or in full, I should say, because the protections are clean water, clean air, and there's climate change mitigation and adaptation funding in there. But also it is a job generator. And there are expected to be about 85,000 jobs created because of this Bond Act, local jobs, not out of this state, not overseas, but within New York State. So the 4.2 billion is broken down roughly by about 1.5 billion for climate adaptation and mitigation projects. There are no specific carve-outs about what the projects will need to be. They just kind of give a generalized sort of figure. But in that, for example, there actually is $500 million toward zero emission school buses. And it's an initiative that Green Ossining has been very passionate about, has been talking to schools about, our school system about. There's another 400 million in that 1.5 billion for green buildings and water and air pollution reduction or elimination. As well, 1.1 billion for flood risk measures. And as you all know, especially we've talked about this with the DPW site, we have a lot of concerns about our shoreline. And so this in effect would be another potential source for us to keep our waterfront and our, revitalize the waterfront and reduce inland flooding. And there's all types of other things built into that flood risk measure, things like wetlands and streams and habitat restoration. $650 million for land conservation and recreation. As we know, more people have been out and about since the pandemic using our parks, and we love that. But open space conservation and park improvements are all part of that as well. And then the other $650 million is for water quality improvement projects and infrastructure. And that includes the maintenance of water treatment plants, water and sewer lines. So all of this money will be available for us to, for us to be part of, I guess, when this is passed, and I hope it will be, it'll be another opportunity for us to be able to get grant funding for projects that we may need. There's also an element within this, as there is with the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, and that is that 35 to 40% of the allocation of these funds will be for disadvantaged communities to advance environmental justice issues. I mentioned the jobs already, and the importance here is that I wanted to mention is that not only will your support of a resolution be publicly known, but there are about 300 environmental groups. Some of them are local, like Green Ossining. Some of them are statewide, like the Nature Conservancy, Riverkeeper, Scenic Hudson, some familiar names, but also some obscure organizations, pushing it locally, pushing it throughout their municipalities. I will also add that George Latimer is putting a lot of effort. They are going to be the county, and I'm actually going to be working with the county to expand this throughout our county so that more people are aware of it. You may recall that the propositions that were on the ballot last November, only one of them passed, and there was a lack of education element to that. And so the environmental community, and actually a lot of municipal leaders, because climate change is not a partisan issue, are getting behind this because they understand that their communities need to be protected. So this is, I will say also, Westchester County getting behind this. We are the only county right now that is getting behind this. So a lot of opportunities for there to be education out there, and we are taking complete advantage of it from the lesson learned last year, which is when nobody knows that you have to flip a ballot over, nobody votes for measures. And then we're also trying to educate people about the importance of this. So I think with that, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about tonight. I wanted to just, take the opportunity to explain why I was asking for the resolution, ask for your support, and hope I get it. And that's it for me.
Thank you. I'm going to allow, we're just going to move the laptop.
Thank you, Suzie, as always. I remember the first time you actually came in front of us a long time ago. It was always great to see this kind of improvement that we as a society are trying to improve the quality of life of our environment that we live on. I'm definitely totally in support of this. I think one of the things that our mayor has said a long time ago is that we want to be the greenest municipality throughout the whole USA, and probably even beyond that. So I definitely want to place for that again. But I'm not sure if anybody else has anything in additional questions. Dana, I'm not sure if you're okay with support the resolution. Bob, you're good. So I guess that will leave you with Stuart. So you and Stuart can coordinate for the legislation portion for days to come, for weeks to. All right. Suzie, thank you so much again, and thank you for all the hard work that you do for our community here.
Thank you.
Everyone appreciates all the work that you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, thank you always. I really do appreciate the support on projects, and I look forward to doing more great things for the community. Just as a, by the way, I think Karen, I'm wondering, Karen should have a sample resolution.
Yes, she does.
Okay. If you need me to forward it or anything, let me know, because I could send it right to Stuart as well, just whatever you need.
Stuart has it too.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Oh, he doesn't? He does?
Karen,
Well, you know how to find
Karen
me.
will make sure that Stuart gets it. Thank you, Susie.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Next on our agenda, we will be, Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan will be talking about proposed local law number 10 of 2022. It's a revision to chapter 162 regarding housing, property maintenance, and building code administration. So I am going to now. Oh, is vote to panelist. Okay, this is a function that doesn't seem to work on Zoom as well as it could. All right, Joe, you are now on. Great. Okay, well, that worked. Okay, I'm going to slide this on over.
Stand, so if anyone wants to come behind me.
Wanna-
Oh, please. Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ah, even better. Good. I'll make believe I'm speaking to my children when they were much younger. Hi, folks. I have Joe here tonight. We have what are essentially technical changes to chapter 162. They're in two different categories. The first deals with the issue of what happens if someone purchases a property which has certain defects in it. Courts have basically been finding that unless your code says that you are responsible for maintaining the property, the prior issues do not necessarily carry over to the new owner. Court cases, appellate court cases, just trying to say. So what we've done is we've basically taken what you find in a number of other codes and basically changed it so that now in order to be responsible, you would have to be responsible for maintaining or allowing to commence or to continue to maintain construction, enlargement, alteration. In other words, what often happens is we would issue a violation saying, well, you needed a building permit to do X. And a person would say, well, wait a minute, when I didn't do the work. This is really for work that we discover after the fact. So someone has put a deck on their house, or someone has fixed a bathroom or done electrical work without a permit. A new owner comes in and says, well, but I didn't do the work, so I'm not responsible for it. What this would do is that the new owner, because they're essentially maintaining that property, they would then have to get a building permit. Because courts, and it's the appellate court that essentially covers here, has found that unless you have that language in there, those particular claims can be dismissed. By adding this language in, which is you see throughout many municipalities, particularly on Long Island, we would be in a position to say that you, new owner, have the responsibility to essentially bring the location up to code. So that if they put a deck on and there was no permit for the deck, we would then be able to say to the person, you needed to get the permit. Now, we would not cite the person 2 days after the title was changed. That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking if it's 6 months after the title was changed or 8 months after the title was changed. At that point, that new owner would be in a position to be responsible to get the particular building permit. And Joe, did I miss anything there?
No, from what I understand is that the way we used to handle this was if you purchased the property, you inherited the violation. And in this case, from what Stuart has explained is if the current owner did not commit the violation of, say, building a deck without a permit, they don't automatically assume it. The assumption, the understanding is they did not create the violation, so they're not held responsible unless we add this language into the law, which would allow us to say, well, it may have been built without a permit, but you're continuing to not take out a permit to legalize it.
Right, and one case, for example, the issue was discovered 7 months, I believe, after title change. In that case, the court said, well, by that point, you have maintained it for a long enough period of time, you can get a permit. Now, as this board knows, we do have a policy in the village that if you are applying for a permit after the fact, it's $1,000 or 3 times the cost of the permit, whichever is whichever is higher. $1,000 tends to be. My thought would be that that should not be imposed on a new owner or someone because they didn't do the work in the first place. That's something we, discuss, but that's the first section that we're talking about here is to basically put that language in there so that the maintenance of the particular work also becomes a requirement for a building permit. And again, I said the deck is the example where you see it most, but we have a lot of people who, a property is turned from a 2 to a 3, and let's say it's legally turned from a 2 to a 3. But they didn't get the permits to do that, or they didn't get the electrical. This way, we can then we can issue an OTR in order to remedy. We can then get an appearance ticket if we need to do it with regard to that new owner who, as I said, we wouldn't be going right away. It would be at least 6 months after they became owner. But and in most cases, we would probably with the owner first saying, by the way, just to let you know, you don't have a permit for this. You need to get yourself a permit for it. So that would relieve us of a potential issue with some of the cases we have, because this particularly comes up in foreclosure sales where someone comes in, or even on just regular property sales. We do an inspection, all of a sudden it turns out that there's work that was done and we have literally no record of. In some cases, we may not be as concerned, but particularly if it's an electrical or plumbing issue, we certainly want to know that it's approved. In electrical cases, we use certification from an outside agency. If we don't have that, we are in many cases forced to issue a placard on that building until we know that that electrical work has been approved. This would at least be another means for the building department to deal with the issue. So that's the first. And what the second part of this deals with the issue of driveways. As many of you know, we have many situations where we issue violations because people have redone their driveways. What we've done here is, and Joe worked with me on this, if the driveway is simply being resealed, there is no need for a permit. If the driveway is being redone, rebuilt, reconfigured, or in any way changed, then you're going to need a permit, because as Joe will explain, otherwise we do not know that you are staying within your property line, number one. We have someone who actually has to go to the zoning board, because not only did they redo their driveway, they went beyond the 2-foot setback and in fact went 2 feet onto their neighbor's property. So, I guess in for a penny, in for a pound. The idea here is if it's a reseal, no permit is needed. But if you are tearing up your driveway, even if your plan is to continue it within the sort of the 4 corners that it was before, you need a permit, because the building department would need to make sure you're not increasing the impervious space, you're not going beyond the setback, and in that most recent case, you're actually not going onto your neighbor's property. So that would be the other change. Joe, did I miss anything on that one?
No, the only thing I would add is, understanding that people have had driveways, on their properties for a number of years, and if they're not zoning compliant, currently, because we have shared driveways and so if they're going to do maintenance to it, which means, blacktop is gonna break up over time and they want to repave it, they would take a permit, but they'd have to put it and repave it back in the same location. The reason why we ask for a permit on this is because of the zoning regulations where, there are setbacks, there's a maximum impervious surface coverage. So if in often cases, someone will tell us, well, I plan on repaving in the same location, and then we find out, they added in more, and now it used to be 12 feet wide is now 16 feet wide because they want to park 2 cars side by side on it, and they've increased the impervious surface coverage, and essentially they did not put it back as it was original. So by having a permit taken, we can control and make sure that a person is either just repaving as a maintenance in the same location as it was originally, or if they are asking or requesting to increase the size of it or add parking, we can make sure that they're not passing the maximum impervious surface coverage or not encroaching where they're, violating setbacks, which would need a variance. So I think in this case, Stuart added that into the law because there was some discussion about that, it doesn't currently say in our law that driveways require permits. So by adding this, it allows us to say, well, if you installed your driveway or repaved your driveway and you didn't take a permit, our code says you're required to get one.
And we also added word definitions of what is a building, because interestingly enough, it's not in our housing code as to what a building is. And we included a definition now of a driveway, so that those would both be in there. And those are the proposals with regard to this local law, nothing else. And Joe and I are here to answer any questions that you folks may have. And anyone wants to sit here, I'll stand back here. Hang on one sec. Oh, well, we did, yeah. I thank you, Deputy Mayor. We did include under stop work orders that the stop work order can be issued by code enforcement officers. We included that, which have been doing. That they would sign it. We do issue stop work orders fairly frequently. And basically a lot of times that occurs in the course of doing an inspection of a property. We see that something has gone beyond what is supposed to be done. And this would allow code enforcement officers, building inspector, assistant building inspector, whomever, to issue the stop work order. So just basically adding them as another category of individuals to issue the SWO. Got to come up. Well, you can ask me, and then I'd be happy to, and Joe, and I'll say it to Joe. Go ahead. Right.
Understand.
Joe, the question that Trustee Fritchie had is that with regard to the change with regard to maintenance and adding that, how is it discoverable? And I'll let you answer in a second. Generally, Trustee Fritchie, we may be called in to do an inspection. And a lot of times it's in a multifamily. And we suddenly, and we're going into a property and we see that they've changed a family room into a bedroom, let's say, and there was no permit to do that. And so, and there's electrical work that suddenly appears that's not there. The deck is the easiest example. Someone does it, but it usually comes by an inspection. And sometimes it's an inspection that we're doing, shortly after a new owner has come in, they may be requesting work to be done, and they file for a permit, and we suddenly realize, we come over and realize that that work wasn't inspected. So that's where this comes up. Joe, you're more in the field. So when would this ordinarily be seen?
It's various different things. I mean, it could be where a current owner had a violation for constructing something without any permits, and then even with the violation issued, property gets a transaction happens and somebody else becomes the owner. For us to be able to write a violation to the new owner, I would guess if we wrote that violation and based on the decision from the appellate court, they would say, well, this current owner did not commit the violation. So if we told them, well, this person did a finished basement, the previous owner did a deck, and you have to take your permit. If they don't follow up to do so, say in whatever, 4 months, 6 months, we'd be able to now issue a violation to them because they're continuing to maintain this without getting the proper permit and inspections. That's one way. It would be, where somebody requested an inspection, like Stuart said, for something else that we were doing and realized that, something was constructed. Often they'll tell me, well, I purchased it this way. When did you buy it? I bought it, a year ago. Okay, well, the violation is you actually are now in violation because you maintained it without taking a permit to legalize it. Whereas I would say if we were writing up the violation now to this individual without having this language in the law, and it went in front of the judge could say, well, this person didn't commit the violation, so therefore the case is dismissed. It was the previous owner.
Trustee Fritchie, it's not uncommon. We show up in court that we're told the property's been sold. And it's not necessarily a foreclosure case. It's just property is suddenly sold. We have to find who the new owner is, go through the process, and make that particular owner aware of what their responsibilities are. The masonry and rock wall was added, I believe, and Joe, correct me, that was added into the definition of structure because that's actually in the definition under the zoning code. So the idea was to have consistency with it between the codes. Ultimately, a lot of what is in the zoning code now dealing with building permits and COs, sort of a preview, that's going to come out of the zoning code because it's really not a zoning issue. But that definition, which is actually part of the state definition, already appears in our zoning code. So the thought was we would just pull it over from there and put it into the building code. So it's not that we're adding anything new. It's just, while it doesn't appear currently in the building code, it does appear in zoning. And rather than have two different definitions, we wanted to bring it over to here. Yep. That's over there. Joe, under what circumstances do you need a permit for a fence?
We don't request any permits for fencing at all.
He's not required, that's right. Joe, if it's more than 3 feet, do you require a permit for a fence in the front?
No, we just let anybody who's installing a fence be aware of what the zoning regulations are on the height. The reason why we don't ask for a permit for a fence, if we issued permits for fences can be installed up to the property line. And often, we have the neighbor who will contest and say, well, they put the fence and they built it, and they crossed onto my property. To avoid having people installing fences, outside of their own property line, we would we would have to get a survey, which, you know, having to ask the person to get a survey for putting up a fence around your property would be a cost of what, $1,500 to pay a surveyor. And I think that would be, you know, a pretty big request to ask on homeowners who want to put up a fence on their side yard or on their rear yard or front yard, and say, well, now that we issued you a permit, I have to make sure that I didn't give you permission to install this fence and you went onto your neighbor's property or in the village right away. And the only way to verify that would be through getting a survey. So we don't request fences to be installed to request at all. It's not something that requires installation with footings and support of anything. So we don't ask for a permit. We just give them what the regulations are for heights, and you know, let them know that if you have a fence that it only has like a stockade fence, that you have to put what's considered the good side to your neighbor. And basically what the height restrictions are. You can only do 3 feet in the front yard and up to 6.5 feet inside and rear yard.
Mayor? Half lives. I believe I believe Linda Whitehead is aware of it. Since this is not a zoning code issue, this is a building maintenance issue. It's not within what she was actually doing. But as I did say, one of the things we have discussed with Ms. Whitehead is, for example, the sections in the zoning code that deal with certificate of occupancy and building permits will likely come out of the zoning code. They're more appropriate under the building section. So there will be some overlap with regard to that. The definition of the structure, which is consistent with both the state and the zoning code, you know, we didn't see any issue with regard, you know, to taking that and moving it over here. Right. Right. You will, for example, building, if I'm not mistaken, is defined in the zoning code, but it's not defined in the housing code, which is kind of a weird, I'm not exactly sure why. This way, since we're referring, the idea is since we're referring to the term building throughout building permit, we might as well define what a building is. Yep, exactly correct. I believe with the building, that also came from, it's either the property maintenance code or it's the building code for the state. So it's consistent also with the state code. Right. I don't know. Driveway is not defined anywhere. So that's almost a dictionary definition of driveway, because driveway itself is not defined in the state code. Right. Yes. Okay. I don't believe so. Joe, the exceptions for building permits that appear in chapter 162, do you know off the top if those are similar in our zoning code? I don't know if we have that actually listed in the zoning code, but you know better.
It's not stated in the zoning code. It's only in the 162, and it's also what we put in the 162 chapter is the same as what's in the state, in New York State's Uniform Code section.
Joe, in other words, are these exemptions on the building department website? Joe, okay. Joe, the question is the exemptions that are now in the code, 1 through 8, do those appear anywhere on the building department's website in terms of when you don't need a permit?
I'm not sure. I don't believe it is. It's something we should add to it, and I could do that immediately.
As if I'm translating, but Joe, here's the question. Pre-existing non-conforming driveway that goes from lot line to basically property line or whatever, but it's pre-existing non-conforming. And the property owner then, wants to repave the driveway. Pulls a permit as required. You're doing your inspection. How will you know that what existed before was pre-existing non-conforming and essentially went from lot line over, so that he's not going to get, dinged for being essentially going all the way to his lot line?
Yeah, I mean, what we do is when they submit for a permit, we get a copy of the survey that shows the original driveway on it. And when they repave it, we just verify to make sure we go out and do a final inspection, make sure that the driveway is what it's showing on the survey. Oh, by the way, just to answer the question, I was just looking up on our website. We do have those exceptions on there. They're on the website. It's actually copied as 168 dash 28 building permits, the Village of Ossining Code B exemptions, and it's on there. You can see that on the website.
Thank you, Joe. Deputy Mayor, maybe I could just ask this question. Is the concern about the driveway or the concern about the other portion dealing with the maintenance? With both? Okay. That's why we have a work session. And, you know, what I would suggest, if it's okay, you, Joe, and I can chat. And we can also have it, and we can also have another discussion. This doesn't have to be called at all for a hearing. I brought the first part to the board's attention because there are enough court cases that go the other way that it warranted coming before you to get a change in the code. Right, understood. Yeah.
Now the primary to know that I don't have a file and I'm responsible for allow this right now for my problem.
Where the electrical may come in is it may be a room where it's not even supposed to have an outlet, a light or a switch. That happens. And where that occurs, we clearly know that someone has done work that they were not supposed. For example, we've had, if you suddenly have a room that has, if it's a room in a basement or an attic that is not supposed to be finished, and yet you've got track lighting and you've got other, you know that work has been done that shouldn't be done. So you're right. Otherwise, we would not know. I mean, for most of these cases. Sure.
Years ago, that's something that we should. I think maybe.
Happy to do so.
Make this thing.
I-
Roll it back. You can accept feedback. There's no, it's not.
We had this board and predecessor boards had presented to it proposals to do essentially a certificate of compliance program, which is when a property changes hands, the building department is notified, they do an inspection, they come in, and they essentially bring it up to code. The prior boards were not inclined to do that, either because the fine was too high or for whatever reason. Joe and I have it already on. I mean, we could easily do that. Other Tarrytown does it, Sleepy Hollow does it, it's done up and down. And that would catch it. The only ones you might not catch, and that's why we had a high penalty, is if it was a cash sale and they just didn't want you to know. And if that's the case, then you hit them. But otherwise, you know, we get the brokers involved and say, this is what's gonna have to be done. That would deal with it, because then you're basically saying, you know, within X number of days of the sale, the inspector has to come in, they look at it, and they say XXX has to be done, and then we give you a certificate of compliance, and then basically everything is good as of that date, which makes life much, much easier for all concerned. Yeah. Joe, I can ask the question, is because I know you didn't hear. On the issue of the driveways, what do you do if the owner doesn't have a survey, which we know many don't? So what do you do with that situation then? Or, so what would we, well,
We
in yours
usually-
currently, what would you now require?
They don't have a survey. We print out a GIS map off the Westchester County mapping, and it's not perfect, but it's fairly accurate enough to be able to determine if there's alterations to the driveway.
Deputy Mayor, we can certainly talk a lot about this offline. Trustee Lopez, do you have any? Joe, difference between resealing and replacement of a driveway?
So the resealing is, you know, there's a lot of them that come out and put that liquid seal on just for maintenance, yearly maintenance, to prevent the driveway from over time to actually, you know, deteriorating and where it needs replacement. That you can just do. When they rip up the driveway and they're replacing it with all new blacktop, you know, where it's beyond, you know, beyond the ability to just be resealed any longer, we give them the permit and say you're repaving in the same location. And then that's when we go out and do the inspection once it's done to make sure they didn't alter it. So, you know, if you already have a driveway that's been there for 30 years and it's, you know, right up against the property line, we're not gonna tell them, well, now you're repaving it again, you're gonna need a variance. You're basically just maintaining your driveway in its existing location. The only time it would be an issue is if they enlarge it, it's larger than it originally was, or they paved, you know, it used to be 4 feet from the setback on the side yard, and now they put it all the way to the property line, then you'd be subjected to get a variance. But if you're just repaving in the same location, we would still request the permit only to be able to verify that they don't change the original location. But we'd allow them just to continue to put it in there, even if it's, you know, if it's not compliant with the zoning code of today, because it already pre-existed.
Sure. So let's assume you have I just took a memory test at the doctor's yesterday. This would have been better. This would have been better. Joe, assume you have currently an asphalt driveway. You want to replace it with, say, pebbles or gravel. But what you want to do is you want to extend the gravel to the lot line. Right? Do I have you correct so far? Right. So the gravel could obviously be landscaped. Is that okay?
If you put down a gravel driveway in place of say an asphalt driveway, and you put it up against the property line and your intent is as a driveway, and it wasn't originally up against the property line, you would have to get a variance because our zoning code doesn't specifically say that you're only subjected to those setbacks. If you put an asphalt driveway, it says driveways. Driveways can be made of gravel, can be made of asphalt, can be cobblestone. It doesn't specifically exempt anything in materials. The fix would be is if the homeowner said, well, I put the gravel there and I didn't realize I had to maintain a 2-foot setback. It's pretty much an easy fix. Just move the gravel or go for a variance.
We will come back and have further discussions with the board on this. So thank you very much. Karen, I think our next topic are all of the, so we can bring over the lieutenant and I'll get the rest of my. Doesn't look like we have each of the applications. Hi, Lieutenant, how are you?
Good evening, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. You see, I'm as tall as the clock. It's really amazing. It's really like one of those. If my kids could only see me now. But all right, so we've got folks, we have 4 applications tonight for cabaret licenses. We have Lieutenant Donahue with us. One of them is a reapplication, which is El Manabita. But I'm trying to see how they appear in your packet because maybe we should go in that order first, which would be helpful. I think El Manabita is first.
No,
Is first. That's the last one. Well, that's the last one on here. I'm just going by what's in our packet. I think Lot 2 is first in our packet. Let me just see who we've got. I think that's Mr. That would be Fernando Vasquez. And trying to see. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you got it. No problem. Okay, so page 16 got we've got El Manabita is first, and I believe Attorney Joe Cotto is on. Karen, if we could bring Mr. Cotto over.
Hey, Mr. Cotto, I'm promoting you to panelist. You can turn on your camera.
Joe, are you there?
He's muted.
Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Hi, good. How are you?
Good, good. How you doing?
Well, it's going to be kind of fun because we're talking through this laptop. So if people have questions, either I'll have to ask them to you or they'll come over here. But folks, El Manabita is the first one on. As you all know, El Manabita did previously apply for a cabaret license, which this board denied in January. You have the most recent application. We have Lieutenant Donahue here tonight as well. There was recently another violation that was issued to El Manabita for operating a cabaret without a license that is currently pending in the Justice Court. Joe, I don't know if there's anything you want to say, but as I said, we've got 4 of our 5 board members here tonight to discuss the application.
No, not at this time, Stuart. Yeah.
Fine. So Board members, if there's anything you want to ask or say with regard to this particular application, we do have Lieutenant Donahue here who can answer any questions with regard to this application or reapplication, I should say. Thank you. Lieutenant, the question was, could you go through the violations for 2022?
Sure. One moment, please.
Trustee White said, I believe there are 6.
One moment while I get my computer set here.
No problem.
These guys.
So we have a number of calls for service. I'm just pulling up the cases themselves. Unfortunately, I don't have the seamless docs that I submitted regarding there. ¿Cuáles son las violaciones?
Yes. The question that was asked is the, and Lieutenant, the violation that's in court is still in court. That I know, I think was just recently adjourned. So that matter has not been resolved yet.
Right, okay.
That's correct, Stuart. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. The Trustee White was noticing she didn't see any recent noise complaints with regard to the location.
No, and you know, just as an opener, you know, the bars and locations that typically would apply for cabarets is something that we're refocusing on to a degree with in patrol, as we've had some recent concerning violations and summonses and referrals from a number of establishments. I'm not sure which cases in particular you want to discuss. I know that there was an assault at 107 Main in June of last year. That was a significant case. If there are particular incidents.
You're looking at the 2022 ones? The question asked, Lieutenant, is whether you've seen, or if from looking at the complaints, if there's been a pattern of improvement over time, particularly since January, which is when the board last considered this application for a cabaret.
Yes, for that location, I would consider there to be some improvement, yes.
Any other board members?
The basic report happened on Monday night. Morning. So they're coming to us to ask for cabaret license. To operate without the cabaret license, to operate after the hours of what we would have even permitted you to work, would be midnight.
Joe, just so you know, what Trustee Fritchie was asking about or talking about was the violation that was issued, I guess it was July 11th, for the operating without a cabaret. It was on a Monday night at 2:17 a.m., which would have a Monday morning, which would have been well after the time this board would have allowed a cabaret to operate. So I don't know if you or your client who may be there has any comment with regard to that.
No, not at this time. It's still pending in court. I
Okay,
just want to say that there's, I know there's been incidents unrelated to the bar. Like if something occurs like 3 blocks away, it's tied into the bar for whatever reason, some way. So that's his concern. Of note is that he's been a longstanding business owner in Ossining for like close to 30 years. It's a good reputation, has a concern for the community. And, you know, I've been there. He runs a clean establishment with security. It is a bar, you know, so you have to be careful in any way, but He tries his best to keep everything in order, but majority of the incidents that has been tied to him, it's not even related to the business in some way. I just wanted to make, the board understand that, and that, type of person who he is. He's a longstanding member of the community and business owner.
Thanks. Any other issues or any other points from the board?
Well, maybe not even medicine regard.
What, Joe, just so you know, what Trustee White was saying is that it makes it somewhat difficult, at least for her as a board member, to look at this particular application, given that the violation was for operating a cabaret without a license, and after a time that the cabaret would anyway have been permitted to operate. So that's something Trustee Fritchie mentioned as well, but I just wanted to let you know what Trustee White had said.
No, thank you, Stuart. That's understood, and it's pending in Ossining court.
Right.
It's an allegation, so we're dealing with that.
And just for the record, to respectfully refute Mr. Mercado's statement, none of the cases involving this establishment happened 3 blocks away.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Anyone else from the board? Anything else with regard to this application?
I maybe particular perspective, but the way that I come to the beginning of the year was that part of coming to us with cabaret licenses that I saw the pattern of behavior that was that we're looking for it to do, meaning also all sorts of noise complaints, quality of life issues that we will not grant them a cabaret license in order to hold the quality in the village. And then when we're looking for improvement from January until they reapply in order for us to feel comfortable with a cabaret. It is a I have a DJ Sunday and Monday morning and when you look at 2021, it's 6 instances, 2 altercations, and a disturbance. So 50% and really the ordinance violation. To me, the last 3 are so of the 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 are legitimate issues that they have. My bar wasn't perfection, there was improvement, and so to me, I would feel comfortable granting them the again, because they would be coming back to us, correct me if I'm wrong, we were in January for another campaign. And so if we're ready September, my feeling is it's in good faith, grant the cabaret license, have them come back to us in January to demonstrate.
Joe, just to let you know what Trustee Lopez said, and I again apologize for sort of telephone messenger here. He was noting that, when the board was discussing many of these cabaret licenses earlier in the year, some of which in fact were denied, the idea was to see some measure of improvement from the applicants, particularly those whose applications were denied. In his view, going over what has occurred since January of 2022, while it has not been perfection and it's not the best idea to be operating the cabaret without the license, there has been improvement from the operators of El Manabita. So he would be of a view, or inclined of a view, to approve the reapplication. Also noting that it would only cover through the end of this year. You would have to obviously reapply, beginning in January for a 2023 cabaret license. So just want to let you know what he said. with regard to that.
Stuart, as always, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
¿Qué dijo Omar? ¿Quién la negó Omar?
Sure. Joe, the question from the deputy mayor was, and we're not now talking about the court case, but has there been any contact between the folks at El Manabita and OPD, just in terms of how to improve things so that they could proceed with getting the cabaret license, which was one of the things that I know that in case of each of the denials, the applicant was told to communicate with OPD in terms of efforts to how they could improve so that they could get the license when they reapplied. Has there been any contact between El Manabita and OPD?
Stuart, I'm just dealing with the matter in Ossining Court, but I have my client right next to me. I'll ask him if there's any, hold on.
Perfect. That'd be
Hold
great.
Hold on.
Put it on mute. So it's-
Well, they hash out that out. I can tell you, I've received no communications from any bar owners about improving their businesses.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Yep.
Okay. My client has indicated that he concurs with Lieutenant Donahue. He hasn't spoken, but he has taken whatever courses the liquor authority has told him to take and his workers. And so he's done that, in order to improve whatever was lacking before.
Thank you, Joe. Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
One of the things that looking at the movement, awesome. A little bit of one this now with nine a little bit similar. And the training and the staff and stuff like that is being done. We haven't done that. We don't put improvement. It's not concerned on this and how to go moving forward. But I would like to now that I've done this, I use limited funds any funds that we put in, to actually contact those of others and actually have a sit down with them to explain their relationship.
Joe, just so you know, what the deputy mayor was saying is, was going over the numbers from 2020, 2021, and into this year. He did note that there has been some improvement. He did appreciate that they've taken the courses and they've done that. What he did say is that that if there was a grant, there would be a condition included, which would, require the owners to communicate directly with OPD in terms of improving things. But one of the things, now it's just a member of because we have only 4 board members tonight, as to really what the sense of the board is. And if we're to 2-2 at this point or whatever, we would wait till the mayor returns next week and we can resume the conversation at that point. Because
That's fine. He's willing to do whatever it's necessary.
Understood.
Stuart, okay?
I just want to say, I'm going to agree to restore the license except for that one.
Joe, what trustee White said, and again, I know it's in court, is that while she would be inclined to grant the reapplication, the pending violation is of a concern. But again, I recognize it's in court, so I'm not asking you to comment on it. I'm just sort of repeating for you what she said to me.
That's fine. That's understood, Stuart. Thank
Got
you.
it. Deputy Mayor, would it be sensible to hold this to next week till we have the mayor back? So, okay. So Joe, what we're gonna do is, because the board, I don't have there's not a majority in terms of at this point granting the reapplication, but we only have 4 members here tonight. So we're gonna put it over till next week as a continuing business matter when we can discuss with the mayor, who will be the 5th member, and then we can get a sense of where we are. So I'll send you an invitation for next week's meeting, and we'll take it from there, okay?
Thank you, Stuart. I
Thank you,
appreciate
folks.
it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
The next application, folks, is La Tusa Bar Restaurant. And we have Mr. Quezada. We also have
Mr. Quezada, I'm going to be bringing you over as a panelist. Mr. Quezada, you can put on your camera if you'd like.
Trustee, I believe it's a relocation, because they have a temporary SLA license through the middle of November, because they asked to in terms of a move. But good evening, Mr. Quezada. How are you?
Good evening, everyone. How you doing?
I have 3 members of the board who are here tonight. We have Lieutenant Donahue here as well. Do any members of the board have any questions with regard to this application for a cabaret license? The one thing I think I did point out to the board members, and you may have noted, is that the proposed hours of operation are 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. 2 things, Mr. Quezada. One, I believe that's also the hours. I know 4 a.m. is your closing time.
Yes.
Under our code, a cabaret cannot operate past 2 a.m., but the board has generally gone that if where it's a weeknight, it's going to be midnight, and if it's a weekend, it's 1 a.m. So I just want you, that's in terms of cabaret operation. Weekend being Friday, Saturday. So just so you know that that's what the board has been doing up to this point. So
Okay.
in this case, you would be going your Wednesday and your Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday would be a midnight end of the cabaret, and your Friday and Saturday would be a 1 a.m. end of the cabaret. Would that be acceptable to you?
So I won't be able to get it till 2 a.m. on basically on weekends, except Sundays, you know.
Well, what I can tell you is this. While the board will on occasion look, and the manager has the ability to extend or on a one-off type thing, be it a holiday, be it a Memorial Day, a Labor Day, or something like that. Generally, because all of our restaurant cabarets are essentially in residential zones or near them.
Yeah.
Taking the view that if it is a weeknight, which would include a Sunday night, midnight is the cutoff time. That's not when you close your establishment.
Yes.
That's for the cabaret, and that for weekends, which is Trustee Lopez noted, would be Friday, Saturday, it would be 1 a.m. That has been over the past year, and if not more, a hard and fast rule the board has followed. So that's That's where it is. Again, if there is a particular day where you needed to go potentially to 2 AM, be it a holiday, that's something you can ask the manager to do, but that would really be a one-off. It would not be something that would be provided for in the cabaret license to allow you to do it week in, week out.
Understood, yes.
Second. They would submit it to the manager to do that. That is, the point that was made, Mr. Kazadi, is that if you have certain events where you would want to stay open for that event to 2, you could make that application to the village manager. But again, it would not be every week, all the time. It would have to be specific events that you would then present to the manager to allow you to extend from, let's say, a 1 to a 2 AM. But otherwise, it would be midnight weekdays, 1 AM weekends.
Understood, yes. All right.
Okay. Anything else from board members?
Across from the high school, right?
Mr. Kazada, this is across from Ossining High School?
Yes, and actually, I have done I'm doing DVA. So basically, La Tusa restaurant, it's that's what I started with. But my DVA is La Social Bistro Bar. That's and yes, it is right across the high school. Correct.
That doesn't do anything.
No, but well, the question was asked, does it influence anything? There is a distance limit in terms of operating, but they are actually far enough that they would be able to operate at that location.
Yes. Yep. We did clear all the the distance from high school and the churches.
So, Mr. Kazada, when I know you're under a temporary license now.
Correct.
When
Yes.
you get the new license effective, would be in the middle of November, that would be under La Social Bistro Bar. Is that what you're looking to do?
That's I had an email already. I had my lawyer email the legal authorities. If I could just or how much of paperwork is going to be to try to reapply to everything, because right now everything is backed up. It took me 4 months. I think that it should have taken like 3 weeks, for a temporary license. So I don't think there's any issues if I keep it as La Tusa. I already did all my filing through the state as far as doing the DBA, and they approved it. So that's where I'm standing. Where we stand now.
At this point, the application is for La Tusa, so that's what the board could do. And if you have a change in the DBA, that's a matter you'd obviously let me know, you'll let the police know, and you'll let the clerk know so that we can, if need be, change the license. But that's something that can be done. Anything else from board members? Okay, everybody seem inclined with regard to this one? Right. Mr. Kazada, basically the board looks favorably on this particular application with the understanding, again, that it would be midnight for weeknights and 1 AM for weekends in terms of ending the cabaret. But with that, we can have a resolution on for next week's board meeting to grant the cabaret license.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Lieutenant, there was nothing with regard to this particular location, if I remember correct, right?
No history.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
1 second, Mr. Kazada.
Okay.
Sure. Mr. Kazada, one request made from the deputy mayor is that as you're starting this process and getting your license, if you could just, follow up with the Ossining police and just, see if there's anything in particular you need to do with regard particularly to the location and in terms of operating the cabaret, that would really go a long way.
I will definitely get in touch with them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Reach out to me directly, Mr. Kazada.
You got it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kazada. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Next, folks, we have here coffee. And for that, Karen, if you could let Mr. Hardman
Hey, Mr. Hardman, I'm bringing you over as a panelist. Put your camera on.
Hi, Mr. Hardman. How are you? It's Stuart Kahan.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Stuart. Good
Hi.
evening,
The way
Lieutenant
we're
Don.
doing this, because we're having some sound issues, if the board has any questions, they'll ask me and I'll ask you. We also have Lieutenant Donahue from the OPD. Folks, this is a new cabaret license from Here Coffee at 20 Main Street. They have a beer, wine, and cider license from the State Liquor Authority. They are looking to operate, and I did discuss this with Mr. Hardman. Obviously, it's not going to start a cabaret at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., which is the if they will conform, it would start presumably at noon, but it would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and presumably Mr. Hardman from noon till 8 p.m. on Thursday and Friday and 9 p.m. on Saturday. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions with regard to this application?
You might have. That's what.
Mr. Hardman, the question from Trustee White is what kind of performances and music might you have there?
We are looking to have basically coffee house type performances, singer-songwriter, maybe acoustic rock, jazz, that sort of thing.
Are you open?
The question is, are you open yet?
We are not open yet. Hopefully, we'll get some good news on from the health department next week regarding our roasting operation permits, and that's really the only thing holding us up. So we're getting close. We're just not quite there yet.
Are you going to roast your own beans?
We are going to be roasting our own beans.
Anything else from the board members? Okay, Mr. Hardman, we will have a resolution which will be before the board next week to approve the cabaret license with the times we've discussed.
All right, excellent. Thank you,
Thanks so
everybody.
much.
I appreciate the time.
Well said. Folks,
All right.
the last one, and I'm going to talk really fast because it says our battery is running low, is for Grace Hall. We don't have anyone here on behalf of Grace Hall, but Lieutenant, I know that there were nothing was observed with regard to this. Grace Hall has had a cabaret license in the past. Right. And what they're basically looking for is operate the cabaret, and let me just go to the times here, would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, 1 p.m. to 11 p.m., anywhere from solo performers to a 5-piece band. That's the application. Again, this board has granted their application in the past. Any objection from the board with regard to this one or any comments? No? Okay, then we'll also have a resolution with regard to Grace Hall for next week. Lieutenant Donahue, thanks so much for participating. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great night.
Thanks, folks. We have nothing else with regard to the main session. Did we want to do anything in the exec on the properties? Did you want to talk about those two properties? We have State Street and we had we may just want to let, well, okay. Well, we have one very brief thing. We can do it in exec, but otherwise we can call a meeting.
Good night, everybody. Meeting adjourned.